Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here today and participate to this conference dedicated to blockchain technology. I'm especially thankful to Professor Adam and for her enthusiasm, the enthusiasm that she put to this initiative. Just a few words to introduce myself. I'm an academic researcher. I'm currently affiliated to the Center for Blockchain Technologies of the University College of London, and I'm specialized in blockchain application and GovTech. But I also work as a blockchain advisor, and I am the international coordinator of Trusted Chain. And today we are going to explain what Trusted Chain is. We will see some main functionalities for public administration in particular. So let's start by saying that Trusted Chain is a very particular blockchain. It is a blockchain especially designed for sensitive data. Sensitive data are those typically generated by public administration and the government, for example, but also by healthcare industry, by banking, finance, and also by supply chains or Internet of Things platforms, for example. So these kind of data are particular because they might need, for example, high security standards, continuity of service of the platforms, long-term preservation, privacy, low compliance. So they are quite different than other kind of data. And they have to be managed with care for this reason. So Trusted Chain is an ecosystem that manages especially this kind of data. How does it work? Well, it's an ecosystem where only trust service providers are allowed as full nodes of the network. The full nodes are those who validate, read and validate the transactions. So this platform is based on trust, on the trust service providers. And these are qualified companies. They are usually appointed by European governments. Their task is to manage and store documents for public administration and businesses, for example. But they also deal with services such as certified electronic signatures, seals, timestamps, and so on. So when we use trust service providers as full nodes of the system, we automatically have a highly reliable and safe platform. So you can understand this is an ecosystem that have a very high level of trust and coordination. And this may sound a bit weird. After all, they told us that the blockchain is a trustless system. So why do we need such a big level of trust, such a big level of coordination? We are going to the opposite direction compared to platforms like Bitcoins, for example. They are completely trustless. So what do we need all this? Well, consider that, as we said earlier, data are not all the same. So certain data can be safely managed through open platforms and other can't. And especially the data generated by the public administration are sensitive and need to be managed with great care because from them depend the rights of millions of citizens. So that's the reason why we deal this data through a high level of trust, okay? So now we are going to elaborate very briefly on some reasons why the open blockchains don't work very well for this kind of service. Okay, so we understand better the added value of this kind of platforms. The first reason is related to technical performance, because when we use open blockchains for sensitive data, many problems may occur. Consider that this kind of platforms were created mostly for peer-to-peer financial transaction. Bitcoin is a typical example of it. So they are multi-purpose and they are not optimized for other specific functions, okay? So if we use this kind of network for sensitive data, we may experience, for example, low performance in terms of security, scalability, general capability of the network that must be not efficient, and latency that might be too high. So Another problem is related to the irrelevant data, because this kind of data push the public administration that may want to use it, for example. This kind of network, may push a public institution to deal with a big quantity of data that are no concern for them. And this leads to dissipation of computational effort. So public administration is instead dedicated network. They are streamlined for specific function. This is very important. Open blockchain may be very good for simple functions like peer-to-peer payments, for example, but when we come to complex tasks, to sensitive data, and to e-government, we need something that is dedicated and streamlined for this kind of purpose. Another problem is related to volatility, because this kind of open networks strongly depend on speculative mechanisms such tokens, and this is a problem especially in the long term because the data can be exposed to unpredictable market dynamic, okay? Always remember, data are permanent in the blockchain, but the blockchain not necessarily is permanent per se, okay? Blockchain can be volatile. So even in this case, public administration needs instead business continuity of the platform and needs most of all the preservation of sensitive data in the medium and long term. This is a very important point. Volatility may put at risk the existence of data in the long run, the existence of the digital assets that we manage through them, and most importantly, for example, even the future execution of smart contracts. So we don't know anymore if our smart contract will be really executed in 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years. So this is a problem. The third problem is related to the transparency of ledger. It can be a problem for public administration because, you know, transactions in ledgers like Bitcoin are visible to anyone who explores the ledger, even if in pseudo-anonymous way. And instead, privacy, confidentiality are essential for the government and for enterprises. Think, for example, about banking or healthcare. Okay, these are particular industries that need a high level of confidentiality. We have today systems like the homomorphic cryptography and also the so-called zero-proof knowledge, but they are still inefficient on large scale. The system helps the ledger to hide the transaction. At the moment, anyway, they are not so efficient to be deployed in large scale. So even in this case, transparency might not be an asset, but is actually more of a problem. And this also show you how blockchains can have different functions and how we can have transparency as an asset, for example, for peer-to-peer transaction, but it becomes a problem for public administration. It's very interesting to see how many trade-offs we may have when we are dealing with a blockchain. And finally, very briefly, I want to say something about law compliance because open blockchains are mostly based on a computer code that is difficult, if not impossible, to regulate by public institutions. In general, in peer-to-peer environment, it's always difficult to establish responsibilities, rules, liability, and so on. Think, for example, about customer protection. This gives the network a relative sustainability and gives also the digital communities self-organization power. But public administration and many businesses follow a different logic because they have to work in a highly regulated dimension. All the time they have to provide information to authorities, for example. They have to prove compliance. So it's difficult for them to implement new service and standards if there is no clear recognition under legal point of view. This is also the reason why open blockchain are still struggling and still don't have a big impact, at least yet, because there is this is a big problem, the problem of low compliance. So, analyzing all this problem, we came to the conclusion that public administration works better with permissioned ledgers, and we created this ecosystem that is based on a high level of trust and coordination. This system allows us to have high technical performance, first of all, because it's a permissioned ledger, so it is a permissioned ecosystem, so it is streamlined for specific functions. It ensures long-term preservation of data, and this is very important because in this ecosystem we have uncovered decoupled data from any speculative token. We actually don't need it. And it's an ecosystem that also keep confidentiality of all transactions of participants involved and ensure legal compliance. Even this is an important property because trust service providers are European companies, highly regulated at European level, so they are able to automatically transpose the national and international European regulation into the code. Okay, so we have this kind of automatism. Let's see some use cases. How are we using this ecosystem for? In general, to improve the efficiency of all the workflows of the public administration, because we can decentralize all the public ledgers, and we can make also the notarization of ledgers developed within the public administration. That means that we use trusted chain to ensure long-term preservation of data of all the ledgers developed within the public administration. It helps us also to eliminate redundant data. They are quite expensive, by the way, for the public administration. Eliminate accidental error or any kind of unauthorized tampering in public services. And it helps us, of course, to reduce cost, time, and general need for infrastructure. And all this leads to a significant saving in public expenditure. So in time of economical crisis like we are today, I think this is a very, very important point because we can really use money in a better way instead of protecting, for example, redundant data many times. You know, cybersecurity is expensive, and especially data, they are duplicated too many times inside the public administration, create a lot of extra cost. Another property is very important, is related to the proof of existence, because the blockchain offer has a non-reputable timestamp that protects the data integrity, the accuracy, and the reliability of all the documents. And the proof of existence, through the proof of existence, we can certify the existence and the exact content of any file at a certain date and time, hiding the content and keeping the confidentiality. This can have very important consequences at legal and application at legal level. And another functionality that is very important is about the decentralized digital identities, because, you know, today in many countries we use digital IDs based on centralized technology that don't protect the privacy of citizens. This is a big problem, especially in the country where I come from, in Italy. We have the so-called SPID. This is an acronym for Sistema Pubblico di Identità Digitale, means Public System for Digital Identities. It is, let me say it, a terrible system. It's a national scandal because it's managed by telcos that make data analytics on citizen data, and they make a huge profit. Each citizen is sold for €4.50. So my dignity as a citizen is a result for this price. And every citizen is sold many, many, many times to many different corporations. So it's time to stop this. It's time to stop it, and the blockchain helps us to do that because it offers us a privacy by design that is actually urgently needed. I think that decentralized IDs will be the next big battle of civilization, and now we have to make, and we can't say that e-democracy is protected until we implement decentralized IDs. Tax collection and tracking, even this is very interesting because the blockchain helps us to improve the effectiveness of tax collection through smart contract and multi-signature transactions. And this helps us to reduce fraud and ensure transparency. And finally, this is green data, is by far my favorite application of trusted chain. What is this green data and what is for? If we store the data of the public administration off-chain, that means outside the blockchain, and then we simply use the blockchain as an access manager to data, then we can safely cross and analyze all the data that we have in our ledger, but always protecting the privacy of citizens. We can do it for statistical purpose, for example, we could do it for scientific purpose or whatever, but the most important thing is the privacy, confidentiality of the citizen is always protected. So green data is very nice because the blockchain allow us to extract value from the data. Consider that in the new information age, data are the new oil, but it's absolutely crucial that we make data analytics only through the blockchain. It's important that we have a decentralized management of such data if we really want to build a sustainable digital society. So the blockchain allows us to have a new ecology of data that is exactly the opposite of the concept of big data, those generated, for example, by platforms such as Google, Facebook, and so on. So this is a completely different approach because it is decentralized and it is based on privacy by design. And on the top of everything, we can use also artificial intelligence and machine learning patterns on this data. And this helps us, for example, to report anomalies, to predict future problems, to have a more accurate management within public administration, but not only, we can use it also on any kind of environment and businesses. So the green data is really the future, is the way we can really use data to grow in everything that we do, in all the functionalities of our digital platform, are always protecting privacy. And I want to underline that this is possible only with with the permission of networks. We can't do this with open network. So this is one of the advantage to use permissioned environments. Now, from trusted chain, we expect several benefits. We are at very early stage of development. We started just some months ago. It's going to be implemented now in the Italian public administration, but we have contact also with other countries. They are interested to see this approach, maybe to base their service on the top of it. Consider that Trusted Chain is born in Italy, but has an international perspective, and most of all is based on European trust service providers, so it's open to any European public administration. We expect that in a medium, long term, is going to transform the delivery of public services in terms of decentralization, automation, speed, and effectiveness. It's important because it's going to protect citizens' privacy, as we said earlier, and it can reduce fraud in a public service and reduce cost and need for infrastructure. Most importantly, we can start to generate green data and improve management of public administration and business as well. All these factors combined together will lead us to a more sustainable digital civilization, improve e-democracy, and most of all, foster citizens' confidence toward digital service. Okay. My last consideration is about blockchain governance in general for public administration and sensitive data. One reflection about this. In the blockchain environment, we used to think about trust and coordination as a kind of enemy that we have to fight at any cost. This is a simplistic approach. I invite you to be more creative. Think about trust and coordination, first of all, in terms of necessity, because sometimes they are useful and we can't do without them if we want to protect the rights of the citizen. And think about them in terms of tools. They are tools. It's up to us to be creative and try to see which kind of opportunities and advantage we can have using them. So don't be scared to reintroduce levels of trust and coordination if it is necessary. There are trade-offs. Analyze the trade-off and make your consideration. Another thing, innovation got nothing to do with hazard. Consider that innovation needs sustainability. We have to think in terms of security and law compliance. That means that the technical requirements of the platform that we use must match with the interest of all the players that are involved. So if we can do these things, both things, use trust and coordination in a good way, promote sustainable innovation, then we can really build a complex governance that is suitable for those complex tasks, not only of public administration, but also of business and society in general. So this was my last slide, and if you want to know more about the Trust Exchange paper, you can also download the white paper. You can easily find it online. It's titled Blockchain Governance and the Role of Trust Service Providers, and you can Google it and find it very easily. Thank you very much.